Okay, so welcome to the new fertility diet. This is a really exciting class for me to present tonight, and the reason why I call it new fertility diet is because I have taken away some old paradigms and put together lots of new research from various different current sources for you, and honed this down for tonight's about 1 hour class. To give you an awesome overview of how to eat in order to boost your fertility naturally. So I'm really excited to share this information with you because I find it so empowering that nutritional changes can give you this amount of results on your fertility. So a lot of the information tonight will be applicable to both women and men, but most of our audience tonight is women, so that's whom I'll be speaking to. And if you have questions specifically about the male side, or if you are a male attendant and I'm not addressing your question, then please put your question into the question box, which is on your gray control panel, usually on the right side of your screen. And you can also click the hand button to raise your hand and let me know that you have a question, and I can unmute your line to have you ask it. Now, right now, everybody's lines are muted, so and that's just to keep the sound nice and clear. So let's jump in. So you're in the right place here with this class. If you want to empower your fertility with effective food and nutrition choices, and you're ready to make some lifestyle changes, especially around food, in order to boost your fertility naturally, and you need to either lose weight or maintain your fertility-friendly body weight, and you want some tips for how to do that more effectively, and you want to understand why prenatal multivitamins are recommended in the first place, and then how to choose the right one and how to know you're getting the best bang for your buck with that choice. And so on this class, on this webinar, I'm going to show you the one diet that's been proven the most in research to improve fertility, and 7 ways to approach it so that you can achieve results from the diet. And I'm going to give you a few reasons why you may want to check your prenatal vitamins, and you can, if you have them close by, you can get them and get your label, and we'll go through some elements on the label together. We're going to talk about fats and why fats don't make you fat and why they are actually good for your fertility. And I'll also tell you the top 3 foods that you should definitely avoid if you're trying to conceive. Now, I'm seeing that there is a hand up in the attendees. So, Andrea, I see that you have a question. So I'm just going to unmute you. Oh, you put your hand down. Okay, she didn't have a question. Okay. So a little bit about me. I am Elizabeth Sherabadi, and I'm a naturopathic doctor and a registered acupuncturist, and I'm an expert in natural fertility, and I've created the Fertility Empowerment Program, which is a really awesome program that I'm so excited to be launching this month, and it is all about how to sequence your fertility journey properly in 90 days so that you build your most fertile foundation possible and facilitate breaking through obstacles on your fertility journey and bringing your best self and your most well self into your fertility journey. And that's what the program is all about. It's delivered over 90 days and it's all virtual, and I'm really excited about it. So I'll give you an opportunity at the end of this class to find out more about that if that interests you. And the reason why I get so excited about offering information like this is that I feel that healthy babies are the way to change the world in a good way. And, you know, something really happened to me when my eldest niece was born. That's a picture of me holding her when she was about 1 day old. And I had the opportunity to attend both my nieces' births and just to watch them grow up. And I remember this day because I remember how it felt to have my peripheral vision just dull. I just had tunnel vision. All I could see was her, and it just made me feel like something turned on in me that, it just became such a passion and a commitment to protect babies' health, protect birth, protect the health of our future world through intervening before these children are even conceived. And so as those of you who are trying to conceive right now may know, you have an amazing opportunity to give the gift of better health to your future children by how you're building in different lifestyle choices, including your food today, both you and your partner. Can make a huge difference in what you're passing on to the next generation in terms of health potential. And so that's why I wanted to deliver tonight's webinar and make it available to as many people as I could. So at the end of the class, I'm also going to give you a couple of bonuses. So the bonus for tonight is I've put together a three-day diet sampler. So I've thought about how the diet would work in real life and just put together some sample menus for you, and you can have that. And the second bonus is that you are all welcome to have a personal conversation with me. And I can only take 6 maximum this week. So if you want that to happen, then do email me about that. My email address is fertilityempowerment@gmail.com because I have to make it really limited because I have a full practice and we're starting the program next week. So I have lots on the go, but I would love to talk to you if there is a certain issue that you're working on in your fertility journey currently that you would like help working through. And I would love to give you the value of having that and also receive your feedback on what you're needing in your fertility journey, because it only helps me further to be able to build in more valuable content into my program. So it's definitely a win-win, and that's available to up to 6 of you from this webinar. So I wanted to ask you first, what do you need from this class? And so I'm going to be opening up a poll for you. So if you look on your screen, you should see questions come up. And I'd like everybody to just click in the one button, the one circular button that matches best what you're needing from today's webinar. So I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to choose and click your choice, and then the results will come through. So it comes through anonymously, so just pick the one that matches your goal for tonight best. Okay, great. I see people's votes coming in. Awesome. I'll give you about 10 more seconds to click your favorite choice of why you are attending tonight's webinar or what you need from this class. Okay, fantastic. So let's close that poll. And I'm going to show you the results. So resounding 86% of you are looking for which foods to eat to boost your fertility. Awesome. And just 14% which foods can harm your fertility. And the other 3 choices weren't that appealing for you. Okay, fine. So let's focus for sure on number 1 here. And I will definitely talk about the foods that can harm your fertility. And we'll get you all of that information. Thank you. Great job, guys. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why food matters so much to your fertility. So your body is basically made up of cells, trillions of cells, and every one of those cells has a set lifespan. Okay, so our bodies are being renewed constantly and continuously, and one day every single cell is going to just be programmed to die, and it will have been replaced by a brand new cell. So our bodies are in a constant state of renewal, and that includes, our reproductive organs, that includes our bones, our brain, and so every new cell is built from something that at one point you ate and absorbed. And so that means that the quality of your food directly predicts the quality of your health, and fertility is a reflection of your health. Fertility is, for people in the reproductive age, the norm. It is normal to be fertile, and so a healthy body, most of the time, a healthy body will be able to conceive. So I want you to keep that higher level concept in mind as we go through this. And let me just launch right into 7 ways to boost your fertility with food, and we're going to definitely touch on the foods that make a big difference in this journey for you. Okay, so number 1 of 7, fats are your friends, and fats are your fertility's new best friends, especially if you've been limiting fats. And I don't know if many of you have seen this picture before. It's kind of cute and funny, and this is from the Weston Price Foundation. And the Weston Price Foundation is an organization that promotes whole foods, including full-fat animal products, as you see listed here on your slide. And it says they're happy because they eat butter, which is kind of funny, but it might also be true because whole fats have a lot to do with our health and are essential for our health, and they're definitely essential for our fertility. So what do fats do for our fertility? Fats build our hormones. Saturated fats are the building block to make cholesterol, and cholesterol is used to build hormones like estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. We cannot be fertile without saturated fats and cholesterol. So this may surprise you, but cholesterol is actually a nutrient, and it is needed for fertility, and low cholesterol would be a risk to your fertility. So we need fats to build hormones properly. We need fats to help us reduce and moderate inflammation. And inflammation is something that disrupts our physiology, and it can disrupt our fertility. And so certain types of fats will have an anti-inflammatory effect naturally. And those would include your omega-3s. And so I always encourage both men and women who are hoping to conceive to make sure they're getting either plenty of fish and or a fish oil supplement that's been purified to have all the contaminants that can come along with fish, unfortunately, has that removed. Okay, so heavy metals and PCBs and pesticides that do show up in certain fish, especially in certain parts of the world, the fish oil will have that purified. And so if you're on a vegetarian diet and you don't eat fish, or you don't feel comfortable eating fish from an environmental standpoint, a fish oil is essential. Other omega-3s are flax oil, hemp seeds or hemp seed oil, walnuts and walnut oil, chia, and all of these types of foods are really exciting ways to boost your fertility. So if you want to integrate them into your diet, you can easily do so. Put them in a smoothie. You can make chia seed pudding, and you can put them in your oatmeal or your cereal. You can make them into bars. They're highly nourishing. They're full of fiber, rich in minerals, and definitely rich in anti-inflammatory omega-3s. Fats also promote ovulation, and there's different angles on this, but one of them is that the anti-inflammatory omegas, like fish oils, can be used by your body to make hormone-like substances that control these events like ovulation. So every relevant event in the process of conception, right from ovulation to implantation, these involve microenvironments of inflammation, and so the right types of fats are required to create that microenvironment for that ovulation and that implantation and that journey to take place. Fats are a source of DHA. DHA is present in cod liver oils, fish oils, and it's present also in the fat of grass-fed beef, which is pretty cool to know. So cows are meant to eat grass, and when they do that, a byproduct of their metabolism is that there's omega-3, this DHA, being produced in their fat tissue. So beef is not all bad, but I really encourage you to have grass-fed beef only in your fertility diet. because it's less inflammatory, and it all comes down to the cow is eating its proper diet, which is grass and fermenting that grass. Fats are also a source of essential vitamins A, D, and K2. And vitamin A is important in the building of healthy mucous membranes, including the linings of your reproductive organs. And vitamin D is essential in fertility, and vitamin D deficiency is extremely common, and it is correlated with infertility. And vitamin K2 is a super underappreciated essential nutrient that is found, again, in the fat of grass-fed beef and in fermented foods because it's made by bacteria. And it is essential for your baby's skeletal development and yours and your skeletal health. So it basically turns on an enzyme that brings calcium from your bloodstream that you've absorbed from your food, and it deposits that calcium in your bone or into your baby's skeleton as your baby's developing. So that's one that's not showing up in prenatal vitamins. You can easily find it in health food stores now and follow the label, and that way you'll know you're having enough vitamin K2. And then finally, fats give us easy sources of energy without increasing our insulin level. And when we eat carbohydrates, we boost our insulin level, and that can disrupt other hormones, especially women with PCOS or who are overweight. So you can increase the flavor and the energy content in your food by adding fats and oils, and it's insulin neutral. So fats do not raise your insulin, which is very, very important, especially if you have blood sugar issues. Okay, number 2. I suggest eating like you're already pregnant. And this doesn't mean that you have to feel scared of, raw things and raw cheeses or unpasteurized things necessarily. What I mean by this is you're essentially behaving or acting like you're pregnant in order to get pregnant later, or increases your chances of getting pregnant later. So imagine you're pregnant and you want to give your baby the best possible start in life. I want you to actually think of eating that diet now in the months before you conceive, or even weeks if conception is imminent, and that's really cool and exciting for you. But just start to eat this way now. And so it's a whole foods diet, which means the foods look like they look in nature. It doesn't necessarily mean you buy everything from Whole Foods, but Whole Foods, little w, little f, because those are the foods that they basically appear as they are created in nature without having been processed. And it's a diet that's rich in vegetables and fruits. You may want to consider organic animal products and wild-caught fish. I really encourage nuts and seeds if you tolerate them. Some people have allergies and maybe can work around this. Superfoods are foods that have deeper physiological properties even in small doses. So, blueberries and acai berries, hemp seeds or chia seeds I consider a superfood because they're so rich in so much nutrition for such a small amount. Like chia is extremely rich in zinc. It's richer in zinc than pumpkin seeds. It's rich in fiber. It's rich in omega-3s, selenium. You get so much bang from your buck from these types of foods. And then I encourage you to avoid foods that promote inflammation, because we don't want your body to go into a generalized inflammatory state, especially when you're trying to bring in the right kinds of inflammatory activity just at the right place, say right in the lining of your uterus for implantation. And we don't want to kind of trigger your immune system to wake up to a generalized inflamed state. And inflammation and your immune system are really just two sides of the same coin. So inflammatory foods would essentially be processed foods, fried foods, and foods rich in sugars. Also, when you're kind of acting pregnant now to get pregnant later and you're thinking about how to eat as if you're already pregnant, breakfast is mandatory. And it's really, really important that you eat breakfast, especially within 60 minutes maximum of waking, that you have protein in your breakfast. The breakfast meal sets the tone for your hormonal balance for the whole day. So it's essential. I also encourage, like Grandma used to eat, 3 square meals per day. So you're eating enough at each meal that you can last 4 to 5 hours before needing to eat a meal again. This is the best way to keep balanced hormones, including insulin and cortisol. And again, protein every time you have a meal or snack, and that you take the time to actually eat. Sit down, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes while you have a smoothie. I really encourage you to just have a few moments or longer to enjoy that food, chew it, enjoy the flavors, take that break every time that you eat. Okay, number 3, I've called this section Eat Like You're Here. So here, being in this image, a beautiful image of the Mediterranean Sea. And so this is the #1 research-supported diet for fertility. And so if you look at the medical literature, if there's any kinds of general diets that people are put on or that have been on where they have advantages in specific outcomes on fertility, like pregnancy rates or sperm health, it's most likely to have been the Mediterranean diet. Can you all put up your hand if you've heard of the Mediterranean diet and have kind of a sense of what it is? And by putting up your hand, so to put up your hand, you can just click the hand icon on your control panel and just let me know if you're kind of aware of the Mediterranean diet, and it's okay if you're not. Okay, great. So some people are putting up their hands and some aren't, which is completely okay. So let me show you what the Mediterranean diet is and maybe why it can be helpful for your fertility. So the Mediterranean diet is built like this. You can see, actually it's probably fairly small on your screen, but you can see that in the biggest part of this pyramid here is your fruits, vegetables, and a little bit of whole grains here in the corner. There's a lot of seafood. There's some whole eggs and poultry, a little bit of red meat, minimal sweets, that's a tiny pink cupcake at the top of the triangle, and then of course your red wine and your olive oil. So for the fertility part, of course, we're going to hold on the wine, but the rest of the pyramid is appropriate for trying to conceive. And as you can see, like from this little image here, this is a healthy, beautiful, flavorful diet. And the dairy that's consumed in the Mediterranean diet is whole fat dairy products, whole fat cheeses, for example, or yogurts. There are a lot of legumes, beans, and whole grains if there are grain products. And then fresh herbs are often used to flavor food. And you can see here, this is rosemary, and rosemary is extremely rich in antioxidants just on its own, and it's actually a beneficial herb for your liver. And your liver is a detoxification organ and regulates your hormone levels, and I've talked about it in my Overcoming Obstacles to Fertility webinar. So if you want to know more about that part, you can look at that class on YouTube now. So just a quick note about seafood. Now, seafood is best taken really fresh and really local. And there was an interesting study done about a year ago with genetic technology right out of the University of Guelph, which is where I am. And what they found in that study, it was crazy actually. It was 40% of the seafood that they tested out in the Canadian market in the retail stores was mislabeled, meaning when they tested the genetics of that fish, they found that the actual species of fish that was listed on the label was not actually what was in the package. So even when you're trying to make great seafood choices, it can be hard to know what you're getting, and that's why I encourage you, if you are in a nice seafaring area and you're close by and you know the fishermen, or you know how the fish are caught or from where, that can make a huge difference in the quality of the fish that you're actually getting, because you just have so much more accountability. And so some fish are contaminated, unfortunately, with environmental pollutants, and there's all kinds of different environmental and ethical issues around fisheries. So you can use this resource. I've put a clip of it here on your slide. The website is called seachoice.org, and you can use that. They have a database, and they have this, as you can see, red and yellow and green symbols for keying in what fish that you're interested in having, and if it's a red, they will give you some alternates that may be healthier for you. Okay, so fish overall in the research, including in the Mediterranean diet, though, eating fish has been shown to have beneficial outcomes in fertility and pregnancy and children's health from the children who are born to women eating more fish. And the one category of seafood to avoid would be crustaceans, and that would be your shrimp and your lobster and your crab, because they are bottom feeders and they collect a lot of chemicals and pollutants, unfortunately. Okay, so there's a couple of you who have your hands up, and I'm wondering if it's because we were talking about the Mediterranean diet. So if you have a question, you can leave your hand up and I'll answer your question by unmuting you. And if you don't have a question, just click that hand button. Okay, good. Looks like people's hands are just up from that little poll. Okay, so number 4 for 7 proven ways to boost your fertility with food is micronutrients. And micronutrients are a major necessity for fertility success. And micronutrients are the nutrients like vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants that are needed in extremely small quantities in our bodies, but have a massive importance in a whole range of physiological outcomes, but definitely in fertility, and that's what we're focusing on tonight. So micronutrients are, kind of what is in your prenatal multi. And I promised that I would talk about prenatal multis. And so if you have it in front of you, take a look at the minerals and the vitamins listed there. First off, let's talk about iron. Iron is absolutely essential in your fertility and in early pregnancy to promote the correct neurocognitive development in your future child. And iron deficiency is a risk to that type of development. It's also really important in your stamina and your energy and concentration and mood and exercise tolerance. So iron status is very important, and there's a lot of prenatals that have bad sources of iron that are not easily absorbed, that constipate you and hurt your stomach. So one of the best sources of iron in terms of absorbability is iron bisglycinate, and that's the one that I've seen most come up in the literature when any types of iron are compared for absorbability. Iron bisglycinate is the best one, which means that your digestive tract can separate off that iron and actually pick it up and bring it into your bloodstream where your body can do something with it. I'd also encourage you to check your label for the type of folate or folic acid in your product. Now, folic acid is a synthetic form of this nutrient, and it's been recommended for decades, and it's fortified in foods, flour-based foods like wheat products and breads in North America, because so many people were deficient, and because folic acid deficiency puts our children at risk of certain types of spinal cord defects and other birth defects. And so there's this massive fortification, and I think that helped a lot with the statistics on babies being born with spina bifida. But now new information is showing that there's a percentage of the population who have certain gene differences, genetic differences, that just basically mean they do not process folic acid into folate. So a folic acid supplement is not doing much for them or for their children. And the way to bypass this is to simply replace your folic acid with folate, and that on your label will usually be listed as L5-MTHF, which stands for L5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, and that's the active form of folate, and that then you don't have to worry about getting your genes tested or anything like that, as that's expensive, but available if you really wanted to do it. And that genetic test is for MTHFR polymorphisms, it's called. So let's move on to vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 comes in a couple of different possible forms or from a couple of different sources. And the most stable in your bloodstream and in your tissues is methylcobalamin. And so if you see on your label on your prenatal and it says B12 and there's a bracket, then it's ideal if the source of that B12 is actually methylcobalamin, not cyanocobalamin or hydroxycobalamin. The methyl part of that molecule is also giving essentially a methyl group. It's a little molecular tidbit, and it can help to improve the way genes are expressed. And so it's a good methyl donor. So you're really amplifying the effects of your B12 by using the methyl form. I also encourage women to make sure that their products don't contain dyes and fillers and binders. These are just not necessary, and for some women you may be sensitive to those non-medicinal ingredients. And most prenatals, as I mentioned, don't contain vitamin K2 yet. They may not contain DHA or enough DHA. And the prenatals, at least in North America, will only contain 1,000 units of vitamin D, and research is showing that most of us need more than that to optimize our vitamin D status. Okay, before I move on to this next section, there are a couple of hands up. So Stephanie, I see that your hand is up, and if you have a question, I can unmute your line. Stephanie, do you have a question? Stephanie, are you there? Okay, Stephanie may not have her hand up on purpose, so just give her a minute. And Stephanie, if you have a question and I can't hear you for whatever reason, just go ahead and type it into the question box, and I will definitely answer it for you. Okay, so number 5 is to whittle your waistline. And let me tell you why weight weighs in. About 12% of infertility cases are attributable to the female's weight, whether that's overweight or underweight. Most people, at least today in 2015, if they're going to be struggling with a weight issue around fertility, it is overweight most often, and overweight and obesity do increase the risk for complications in your pregnancy and for health outcomes for your child, including certain types of birth defects. So if you have an opportunity to focus on weight management before you conceive, it is a very significant investment, not only in your ability to conceive naturally or with IVF or other reproductive assistive technologies, but it's also a wonderful gift to be able to offer to your child, because just the very fact of having obesity or overweight, it changes our physiology enough, and it seems to change the way genes are expressed, and so you can offer your baby much greater opportunities for health in their life by taking care of yourself today with achieving a healthy body weight. If you are overweight and you happen to also have polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is the most common female hormonal disorder for women in the childbearing years, then studies are pretty clear that a small amount of weight loss can make a huge difference in your fertility. And so we're talking about a 5 to 10% weight loss. So for a woman who's starting at, say, 190 pounds, that would be, that could be 10 pounds, and that could restore her ovulation. So excess fat cells that we carry in our bodies actually produce what I call renegade estrogen. It's estrogen that is not being produced from our ovaries, not being produced from our adrenals, which are the normal ways that estrogen is made. It's just getting made by fat cells. So it doesn't have the same types of regulation, and that can lead you to hormonal imbalances. Fat cells also are a storage site for toxins, so it is important to lose weight slowly and sustainably because you may release toxins into your bloodstream, and you need to have healthy liver and kidneys to release those toxins as you go. Okay, number 6, so we're getting there, everybody, is to push up on the protein. Most of my patients in my practice, if they are going to err on the side of low protein or high protein diets, they're too low. They're not getting enough protein. And protein is the basic building block of all of our tissues, and it's essential for maintaining your blood sugar balance. It's essential for your muscle health and your immune system. And every single neurotransmitter that we have that has to do with mood and thoughts is actually derived ultimately from some kind of protein that we've digested and absorbed. In the women's health, the nurses' health study, which was a very large study, and it was done in over 100,000 women, and this Chavarro is one of the main authors on that research, and he is a co-author on the book, The Fertility Diet. And so they looked at a deeper way at protein, and they compared whether if women had added more meat protein versus more plant protein to their diet, what happened in their fertility outcomes. And this study was looking at ovulatory infertility. So women who struggled with infertility due to problems with ovulation were much more likely to have those problems with ovulation if they favored more meat protein versus vegetarian protein. And vegetarian protein sources are listed here for you. They include beans, peas, nuts, peanuts, tofu, and soybeans. So as I mentioned too, protein is essential to weight management, and one strategy to help yourself lose weight is to replace some of the carbohydrate in your diet, like the starch and definitely the sugar, with a source of protein, because protein is less stimulating to insulin, and when we bring the insulin down, we are in less of a storage mode, so less of a building fat mode, and we go into more of a burning fat mode. When we talk about how to proportion your plate, including for protein, I always say talk to the hand. So on the hand, you can see the approximate size of your portions for your meals. By looking at your palm, that's about the size of your protein that you can be having into your 3 meals. That's the protein part. If you make a tight fist, that would be the amount of rice or pasta that you would have, or potatoes, that would be appropriate for you to have. And that might be surprising for some of you, because when you make a tight fist, it's actually a small amount. It's smaller than you might think is how much starch that we actually need. If you make a loose fist, that would be like a starchy vegetable. So a carrot, for example, or squash. If you stretch your hand out to the maximum stretch that you can get it, that's the amount of vegetables that I want you to have on your plate. So it's basically going to fill half your plate with vegetables. And then a thumb size could be like if you take your whole thumb right from the base at your wrist, that would be like a cheese size. And if you take the end of your thumb, so basically like 2 tablespoons or so, 1 or 2 tablespoons of volume, that's your fat. So definitely have some kind of fat or oil at all your meals for promoting your fertility. Okay, I'm going to give you a poll because we're right at the one that some of you have been waiting for, which is the 3 foods that are shown by research to be the most harmful for fertility. So I'm going to put a poll up. And everyone can vote now. So I will give you another 20 seconds to click which combination of foods do you think is most harmful to fertility. And I'll give you a clue. We are talking about ovulatory fertility here. So, how to promote ovulation by avoiding certain foods. So go ahead and click your best choice. Okay, and I'll give you another 10 seconds to make sure you got your vote in. Click the one that you think is the most correct. Okay, let's close the voting. Okay, very good. So a full 2/3 of you thought choice B, so white bread, soda pop, and shortening would be the most harmful to fertility, and a third thought that white bread, chips, and french fries would be most harmful, and nobody thought olive oil, nuts, and butter were bad for fertility, or that meat, full fat cheese, and butter were bad. Okay, great. Probably because I gave you a clue about the butter before. Very good. Okay, so I will reveal the answer. And it is choice B. So white carbs, pop, and trans fats are the top 3 foods that have been shown in data from the Nurses' Health Study to interfere with ovulatory infertility, at least by association. So with the women who consume the most trans fats or white breads and white carbs and or pop were the most likely of all the different other groups to have problems with ovulation and infertility. So trans fats, so in the quiz question, it was listed as shortening. And so trans fats are a type of fat that is, I guess was created around the 50s in the processed food industry. And basically what they did was they turned a vegetable oil as a liquid into a solid at room temperature. And it's used in pastries and pie shells, and it's like Crisco or just generic shortening. It's also used in some countries as a fryer oil for deep fried foods. And it is a potently dangerous molecule. It is terrible for your cardiovascular health. It actually has no place in the body, unlike most other fats and oils. It is a manufactured molecule. And it is linked with ovulatory infertility, risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and even dementia. And if we need anything by the end of our life, we need our mind and our brain health. So these are to be avoided at all costs. In many countries, they're essentially illegal now to put in foods, and they must be labeled on your food labels, at least in Canada. I'm not certain for the US if that's required by law yet, but maybe if one of you are in the US, you could tell me that in the question box or tell me in raising your hand. And number 2 is white starch. So white bread, bagels, muffins, cakes, pies, anything made from white flour has an ability to increase our insulin quickly because it increases our blood sugar quickly, which decreases a compound called sex hormone binding globulin. And sex hormone binding globulin is like a binder for hormones, and it doesn't allow them to be active toward our cells if the hormone is bound to that. So when you decrease sex hormone binding globulin, you release a lot more testosterone to be active and high testosterone levels blocks ovulation. This is especially problematic in women with polycystic ovary syndrome. But remember that up to 70% of people women with polycystic ovary syndrome have not even been diagnosed. It is highly underdiagnosed. So keeping the white carbs out of the diet to keep your insulin down will also help you lose weight as it balances your hormones and your testosterone as well. And then number 3 is pop. And pop is very high in sugar. And there can be about 9 to 14 teaspoons worth of white sugar dissolved in 1 can of pop. And women who drank 2 or more pops per day were 50% more likely to have ovulatory infertility. This was in the Women's Health Study, a very large study, compared to women who drank pop less than once per week. So I would just take pop out and replace it with a nice sparkling water, and you can squeeze lemon into that, or a nice natural juice to give it a tiny bit of flavor, or just get used to drinking water and let that be refreshing again. And once you've adjusted your palate, it will actually taste good, and pop will taste way too sweet. If you like the flavor too, I always encourage herbal teas. So that could be peppermint or orange or rooibos or chai. There are so many delicious tasting herbal teas now on the market that give you that flavor without the sugar. And interestingly, the effect with pop was true when they divided out caffeinated pop versus non-caffeinated. So it's not about colas and having caffeine, it's the pop itself. That was the problem for fertility. Okay, so now we can go through I have a question. Let me go through questions first. So if you have any questions, put them into the question box as I am able to read them. I know you can't see each other's questions, so I will read out the question and answer it. So we have a question from Katie. Some supplements at drugstores are labeled as folic acid and in brackets folate, or vice versa. Folate, folic acid are either the active form. Possibly, and the best way to find out would actually be to call your manufacturer. So if you've already purchased this product, if it says folic acid, it's folic acid. It's the synthetic form. And that's going to be the most common way to see this nutrient coming up on labels, especially in the drugstore. And so I know that most of the professional grade supplements that, say, a naturopathic doctor or a functional medicine physician, if you're in the US, or a naturopathic doctor in the US, would have access to would be the active form of folate, but probably not necessarily yet in the drugstore. So you are looking for, like if it said folic acid in bracket L5-MTHF, that would be great. Or if it said L5-MTHF bracket folate, that would also be the active form. But anywhere that you're seeing folic acid, that's folic acid. Hope that helps, Katie, to clarify. And we have another question. Are white potatoes white carbs? No, they're not. They're a starchy vegetable. So white potatoes, especially if you've cooked it yourself and it's not like say potato turned into a starch, turned into something else, that's great. That's considered a whole food. And I would do like a type-fist dose of that per meal, as we talked about in the talk to your hand section. Andrew's asking, does coffee have an impact on fertility? Yes, it does, and I haven't covered that specifically in this class, so let me fill you in on that. The studies are clear that coffee, when consumed in excess, does impact on fertility and miscarriage risk. So it is a no-no over, say, 2 cups a day. But 1 is clearly considered safe, and 2 would be the maximum for any given woman that I'd want to have on who's trying to conceive. And similarly for tea, Tea, again, the jury is kind of out, and there isn't one necessarily certain dose of tea that's considered appropriate. I would keep it to 1 or 2, and there can be as much caffeine in a cup of tea or more as there is in a cup of coffee. So just keep that in mind. And all of these things are herbal extracts. They're botanical medicines. They're plants extracted into water, and they don't have a standardized amount of caffeine per extract, right? So it's not going through a lab process. It's a physiologically active substance, so use it wisely. I would stick to 1 a day maximum. Is dark chocolate harmful? I haven't seen any research that showed, if you ate this amount of chocolate, it was actually harmful. So again, there is caffeine in dark chocolate, but there's also nice source of fats. And if you get it dark enough, like 80% or darker, it's quite low in sugar. So if you had 2 or 3 squares a day, I would think that would be totally okay, and might be a nice alternative to having coffee, because coffee can be acidifying to your body and dark chocolate probably is not. Okay, another question. If you have facial hair growth and acne, does that always mean PCOS? No, it doesn't always mean PCOS, but facial hair and acne fit under one of the diagnostic criteria, and there are 3 diagnostic criteria that need to be met to diagnose PCOS, but no, facial hair and acne alone are a sign of high androgens, so high testosterone or male type hormones. Women, we all have that, but we're meant to have a small amount, so we shouldn't have acne and facial hair, of course. So I would definitely consult with your healthcare practitioner about those symptoms. It's a sign of some kind of imbalance, but not necessarily PCOS every time. And is there a type of herbal tea that helps with conception? Yes, absolutely. And that's probably a topic for another class, because I could talk for 2 hours about herbs that help with conception. But let me tell you a couple that are safe that you can all jot down from this webinar, because I promised I would talk about food, and I would talk about foods that promote conception. So some of the ones that are I would say supportive because they're nutritive would be alfalfa, nettle, oat straw, maybe red clover, and that's a little bit more estrogenic. And things like peppermint and chamomile, and lots of other herbal teas that are used more in grocery store level, and they're you have them in the kitchen. They're a source of minerals and antioxidants too. So they don't necessarily directly help with conception, but they nourish your body, and again, a healthy body will, in most cases, eventually conceive. So I hope that helps. Okay, so let's just take a look at what I've put together for what this fertility diet would look like on a day-to-day basis. So day 1 could be you have oatmeal, and you use a whole fat milk or non-dairy milk like coconut milk or almond milk. You can put a whole bunch of nuts and seeds into that. So I would recommend, looking at flax and chia or hemp seeds, and then sunflower and sesame seeds as well. And so you're adding protein and good fats into that. So never just have carbs for breakfast. Don't ever have just toast or just oatmeal by itself, or like a pastry. Always have a whole grain if you're going to have carbohydrates, and put some protein with that. And the easiest way is to throw a couple handfuls of nice raw nuts and seeds onto that. For lunch, it could be a chili, whether made from meat like chicken or beef, or made from vegetarian sources like beans and lentils. A roast turkey for supper with lots of vegetables on the side, maybe a little bit of potatoes. And if you wanted a dessert or a snack, a Greek yogurt, which is full fat, so no non-fat yogurt, adding some nuts in there for more good fats, some fruit, and maybe a little bit of honey or maple syrup if you need it sweetened. And I always recommend like no aspartame and no sugar in that yogurt. Okay, so day 2. You could have a beautiful mango protein shake for your morning breakfast. a kale salad with some kind of protein. So in this one, there's some shredded goat cheese. And goat cheese now comes in lots of different forms, including like cheddars and harder cheeses if you like that. And I like goat and sheep milks alternating in with cow's milk because at least in North America, the goat and sheep farming practice is probably a little bit more healthy for our fertility. But either way, I want you to use a whole fat cheese. A snack could be vegetables with nut butter, and supper, an omelet with lots of vegetables inside, a green salad, and this is a chia chocolate pudding. And so chia is amazing because it makes really healthy, extremely mineral rich and fiber rich and omega-3 rich puddings by getting soaked in your liquid of choice. So there are lots of recipes online now to check that out, and it's delicious. Don't eat too much. You can get into crazy problems with bowel issues basically because it's such a large amount of fiber. So go very slow as you're introducing this very delicious, nutritious food. And then for your third day, this is what it could look like. So an avocado and scrambled eggs with sauteed vegetables on the side for breakfast. And lunch could be homemade vegetable soup, and maybe you use bone broth or homemade stock to make that broth because the minerals in a homemade bone broth will be so absorbable and super nourishing for you and really easy to and basically absorb into your body and take advantage of them. And for that, I would add some protein in the form of nuts on the side. And then for dinner could be a salad with some grilled fish. And this is another type of chia pudding. This is a mango chia seed pudding. Okay. Are there any questions about that? I think I've answered all the questions that have come up in the question box so far. And let me just check if any of you have your hands up. Okay, let's check in with Stephanie. Stephanie, you have your hand up, so I'm going to unmute your line and see if I can hear you and if you have a question. Do you have a question, Stephanie? So Stephanie, I can't hear anything on your line, so you may need to unmute yourself as well. So there should be a microphone icon on your control panel, and you can unmute yourself, and I'll come back to you. Okay, so as we're just concluding our hour here together, I'll tell you about the bonus from this webinar. So for those of you who've signed up and you're listening live or you're receiving the recording in your email, if you weren't able to attend live, you have the opportunity to have a phone call with me to explore one issue that you're working on in your fertility. And this is to kind of go a little deeper into your fertility journey than, say, a lot of the awesome physical work that we can do and the nutritional work. This is to help you explore even something that you may not know is blocking you right now from your desire to conceive a healthy child. And that could be something subconscious or emotional. And for the people that have gone through these calls with me, they have come to amazing breakthroughs. And it's something that I've recently introduced as part of my program, my fertility empowerment program, because I've noticed that sometimes we just do all the right stuff and we still aren't conceiving. And I realized there's a whole almost spiritual or energetic component that really needs to be addressed and that people need help with. And so this program is designed to help you on all levels with that. So if you want to explore one of those calls, I'd be happy to help you get that booked. And all you need to do is send me an email at fertilityempowerment@gmail.com and let me know your phone number and your name, and I will call you to book a call with you sometime within this next week, and we'll go from there. So here's my contact information once again. So if you have a question that I did not answer that you were curious about from tonight, feel free to send me an email. And again, I'm booking up to 6 calls from people who've registered for this webinar, and be happy to set my time aside for you for that. The Fertility Empowerment Program is a very small group because I'm giving a lot of individualized coaching to the people who are in it. And so it's a very high level, intensive, 90 days. And so that's why I have to keep it really small. So if you want information about that, or you want to explore one issue together, send me an email as soon as you can, and the email address is right there. So I am going to conclude our recording here today, and I will stay on the line for any additional questions.